What do you think's going to happen post-COVID then? So like right now, you know, we help like 4,000 yoga teachers work online, loads more did. Everyone started doing their little classes online. Some then backed out of that and said, actually, this isn't really for me. I don't like this. You know, what's going to happen after this? Like a lot of studios, I guess, have gone bust. Like, I mean, there's a lot of studios in London. I mean, have they got government backing? Have they not?
Yes, it's a big topic, and I'm quite nosy and still journalist background, so I try and find out what everyone's doing.
Turn sideways.
But also I am a business person. I run a business. It's and we mentioned yoga teacher, and I guess one of the big differences today, you've probably heard it before, I'm a marketeer, I'm a digital person,
yoga entrepreneur as well as a yoga teacher.
Yeah, right, and I'm completely self-sufficient. There isn't a partner or just fund or anything like that.
Don't have a rich banker husband funding your yoga business.
No,
come on, this is not how we do it in London, So it's a common model. It's amazing. Okay, so what's going on? You're nosy journalist. What's going on?
Okay, so. Well, I mean, actually, UK government's not been bad. It has
surprisingly good.
Yeah. So I know, let alone studios. So studios have had, things like their business rates covered, even rental holidays. I'm not saying that's easy, but that has been there. I think what's happening with yoga studios is what's happening, nationally, business-wise, which is if your business was a bit iffy beforehand, then you would have really got it in the neck already. If you were in the red, you wouldn't have survived this. But if you were even a little bit robust, there's no reason why you can't ride this out. Come on, it's 3 months. It's 3 months, So we know it's going on. We know it's given a lot of businesses as a whole. And I'm not being...
The yoga scene could do with being thinned out a bit in places like London,
it can be thinned out everywhere. And that's my personal view. Yeah, there's too much of it, but we are where we are. So, but what I think is going to happen. So, I really don't know. So often I'm quite good at predicting things, actually, but
nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. But here's something interesting. I have has come to me in the last week or so. So, okay, so we're online world. And as you mentioned a bit earlier, you can reach out, tap into, connect to a ridiculous bigger audience now, and it's kind of helped yoga teachers see that. Most of us who didn't even think about that beforehand.
Now they realise that they're taking out the middleman with the studios for some, right?
Yeah, and click, here you go, you're online and you're there. And I'm one of those teachers that
running around London,
anything online before March 23rd, and stayed up all night, watched every bloody YouTube video going, and then went online the next day. But where I'm going with this,
it's the 25th of June right now on time of recording. So who knows? By the time this is out in like July or something, there'll be some other apocalypse happening, and it'll seem like
we could do a bit of quiet, couldn't we?
It would be nice. Would be nice. Let's get very British about this, Divya. It would be nice.
Although some anthropologists say that we're experiencing what we're experiencing because things were too good, things need shaking up, but that's a whole other thing. But something I would like to share with you, Mark, because I know it would interest you, and I hear some of the sort of events that you offer, and it's fantastic how you genuinely want to empower people to get out there and not be afraid. But what I have found for me, and it's just me, is that my local connection has strengthened like anything.
Yes.
So where were these people when? So I teach in community hall and studios local to me. Where were they pre-COVID? And so I see a yearning for, and I don't just think it's people being scared of public transport. I think it's because the online world has opened so much. There's so much choice. People are bewildered. They want to go with the familiar and what they know.
Right.
I think there's a real feeling of, I see it in people's faces and just their energy, that when they connect to something local, there's something actually a bit of security, reassurance.
Yes.
I think we've been subjected to so much global news and things happening over there and the other. And, did you hear the local yoga teacher? I was just before chatting to you, I came up walking back up the high street.
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing an increase. We talked about this in some of our podcasts around trauma. There's this increased sense of community and belonging and knowing your neighbors and getting the numbers and this kind of thing. And simultaneously there's this global sense of us being all connected, and it's like the two things have happened simultaneously, and it's definitely, I don't think anyone can quite put their finger on it yet, but it's definitely changed the relationship between the local and the global and what that means. And I think that's going to be quite interesting afterwards when people have choice. Like, let's say travel opens up in a few weeks, which it probably will, right? Are people all going to go crazy and start going to Bali and India for holidays and, doing that sort of stuff again? Or are they going to be a little bit more cautious, or a little bit more like keeping it in their local community, buying more locally, like having more local friends? I'm going for a walk with a friend tonight, and it's like, okay, we're going to do that a bit more. Or am I still going to be Skyping random people in Russia? It's like, it's hard to tell, but something in that space feels like it's changed.
It does, and I'd be interested, maybe another conversation for us, but I'd be interested to see where your predictions are on that. My hunch is we weren't long enough in a space of transformation for changes to last.
It wasn't bad enough. It wasn't the Blitz. It wasn't the Black Death. It wasn't World War II. It was a few weeks of stress. It wasn't like you had to share food with your neighbors because otherwise you would starve. It wasn't like we had to gang together in gangs to protect ourselves against roaming Mongolians. It's like, it was a pretty fucking millennial light version of the apocalypse, wasn't it? We were in our pajamas most of the time, and the worst that happened was there was a lack of toilet roll for a few weeks. I mean, come on, let's not be fucking dramatic about it.
It actually gave rise to lots of jokes and memes that we would be bored without. So,
and would we be memeing were it really bad? Do you know what I mean? Exactly. If it was really like the Black Death, would we be memeing? We'd probably be like, talking to our neighbors out of terror. And, it's like, I feel like, maybe it wasn't quite severe enough or long enough for people to really change habits. And maybe there'll actually be a swing back the other way. Who knows?
Gradually. But then I think we're also in the hands of bigger systems, like we always are. If the economy still runs the way it is, if schools, education, banks, just if the supply chain, if that's still the same, fundamentally, however much, and would I say struggle? Yeah, a little bit. I struggle with this. There is so much I know I could be and want to be, and how I want to live. And yoga helps me with sort of just managing that stress. However, yoga can't ever help me change the system, and I am a bit of a risk taker, but I'm also quite embedded in the very system.
Yeah.
So there's also, and obviously there's the property side of it, and I think the big change is working from home, and that will have a lot of implications and a lot of
I mean, it's going to be very hard for a boss to get everyone to commute an hour across London through fucking miserable conditions when they were like, hey, I was doing this last month and my figures haven't gone down. Why it's going to be very difficult for a boss to get everyone to come into work every day when they've already proven they don't have to, particularly in more middle class jobs, for people that have houses where they've got spare rooms, and it's like, that's going to be pretty tricky.
Yeah, I mean, look at the amount they've already saved and will save on real estate. I know the CEO of one of the biggest banks in the world has said, on the sly, there's no way I'm going to look how much we're saving just on, on leases and stuff like that.
Right. I mean, the cost of a large building of bankers in the centre of London, the cost of a major office of any corporation, I mean, we're looking at millions and millions. It's just absolutely insane. Yeah. And on top of that, top of the rent space, you've got the heating and the cleaners and kind of all the rest of it. So I think it's going to really change the center of cities, because if you think of the use of a city, the average city is half office space and half kind of everything else. And we've lost a lot of the spaces of, there's going to be less shops, I think, because so many people have got used to buying online. It's
Exactly. And then that will knock on effect the yoga, because certainly, so I'm a Londoner, and, most of the yoga scene here in London has been driven by people going to work, coming back to work, and what, it's the Starbucks and it's the yoga. It isn't.
I love that that's in the same sentence, Starbucks and yoga. Like, I think they're obviously in the same sentence.
I suppose they're inactives as well, but which I've got nothing against, actually. I think gyms get a bad rep for yoga. I mean, you get perfectly great yoga teachers teaching in gyms. I think, we shouldn't be smart.
Sure. Definitely know a few good ones. Yeah.
So I think, the ripple effect of people working from home, that definitely affect the yoga scene and everything else. And but in terms of psychology and, our needs and our short-term needs and desires, I'm not sure that's going to be shaken up too.
We've touched on the political a bit here a few times in different ways. I mean, is there anything you want to say around that topic? I know this is something we've interacted with online a fair bit. There's a sort of assumption that you have a certain politics if you're a yoga teacher. It's
oh yeah.
There's a lot going on right now in this space, so it's like anything there that you want to chime in on.
I've just got a bit of a shudder in my belly actually, because I just wrote a very long letter to my I was going to say my boss. I don't mind calling her that. She owns the yoga studio I teach at.
Okay.
So she, I like the way she approached this. When I say this, you'll know what I mean in a moment, whoever's listening. But rather than we as a studio believe this, and we're going to do this, and we stand by this.
Yes.
Right, and I'll just make a face and you can guess what I think about that. She said, okay, opening the floor here.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think.
Okay, space for dialogue. And was this around the ethnicity issue, the Black Lives Matter kind of thing that's coming up? Is it around?
Which is also really so simple, narrow-minded, clumping this all together. Now I'm seeing debates and videos about decolonization of yoga. Suddenly they're getting 1 million hits on YouTube from so it's opened up that, and then it's opened up yoga as you say, the ethnicity of whether it's teachers or students, and then you've got actually what's going on, then you've got what's going on in America, then you've got and it's like, who decided to put all these things together now? Well, who decided? People who just keep mouthing off and are now suddenly getting, a chance to get their, get their voice heard. But I find it unhelpful at best, and at worst, very disrespectful to the issues involved.
You think there's too many issues clumped together? So there's, for example, police violence in America, and I don't know, cultural appropriation of yoga. They're two pretty. Yeah. Those two issues are not the same thing.
And I love that people have views on these things and across the board, and and that there's a particular yoga teacher, she was interviewed the other day, and to her credit, she wasn't that angry, but because I don't see how that gets us anywhere. But and she was mentioning that sort of overnight after the incidences in America, let's call it plural, her Instagram feed, and she has no connection to Black Lives Matter. Her Instagram feed just went off the scale, because in the past she said she shared a couple of things about her views about lack of representation of Asian culture in the Western yoga. So yeah. If
someone's doing a yoga conference, should there be Indian people there, Indian heritage people there, maybe like yourself who actually grew up in the UK but have that ethnic background? Does that matter, or does that not matter?
I put my come at it, total merit. I don't care what colour, I think total merit. Because we know, a lot of we know about the certain Indian gurus that we know about, right? And were they racist against white people by taking advantages of the Americans coming over in the 60s and 70s and completely, ripping them off?
The modern American notion is you can't be racist against white people. That's
a part 2, Mark, and don't get me started on that. But
okay. I've always wondered, well, what's the word you use for discrimination based on ethnicity then? And maybe there's another word for it. Okay, and it is different because of the power differentials and the history, so I would acknowledge it's different.
Yeah.
Okay, so just on merit, so you're saying that you don't want to be given a job because of the color of your skin?
For me personally, so I have, and again, this is where it's not straightforward. If I could be engaging with another Mark, and I would take into context where you're coming from at this, and if you're asking me that, and I would try and be as sensitive and respectful to that. I know a bit about you, so I know that even though this is a public interview, but I'm respecting our dialogue and where you're coming
from. There's a context, right? And there may be a certain amount of trust. You see my views. You might go, okay, I'm pretty sure this guy's not a neo-Nazi and he's not like a far left kind of communist. You'd have some sort of idea of where I'd stand, and there's a certain sort of respect and a certain sense of like, okay, there's questions I wouldn't ask guests who I'd just met for the first time, or jokes I wouldn't make. We're always, it seems like lack of context, sometimes almost deliberately and maliciously, is a really big feature right now. Like, we have a context, right? With Facebook friends, we go back a little bit. We've had certain dialogues. There's certain jokes me and you might make with each other. There's like levels of sarcasm I was just using. I wouldn't do that if it was an American guest who I'd never met before.
Yeah.
Because we have a context, right? A relational context. And we could get that wrong. We could assume over familiarity, or I could make an assumption. I can make jokes about Irishness and Kilburn or something. And, you know, I might get that wrong. But it's like, we've got a pretty solid context there. And because of that, we're not walking on eggshells with each other. But what's difficult is doing a podcast or social media, almost anything now, because someone can have a video phone.
Yeah.
Someone else can be in a context who doesn't know us, right? Like, someone might listen to the middle of this podcast, miss the bit where they hear that you're a British Asian woman, and be like, who is this awful white racist? You know, like, it's just like, because they're just listening to the British accent kind of thing, you know? So it's just, see what I mean? You get it in the neck. So sometimes it almost seems like people are deliberately missing context or extracting context in order to take the most malicious frame they can.
Yeah.
And fuck those people.
I think there's that going on. I think, again, it's the attention span. I think it's the cult thing. They're getting, security out of joining something rather than thinking individually.
And I have to think for myself. I can join a group and then it's prescribed, because if I'm a liberal yoga teacher or I'm a conservative, whatever, my views are given to me and I no longer have to work that out for myself. And there's a tribe of people who I feel secure in. I get to belong, and they're going to be like, as long as I use the special words, they're going to like me, and then I'm safe.
Yeah, I think use a key word there, belong.
Belonging.
I just think there's a real, I used to think it was peace everyone's after, but I get a feeling it's belonging.
People will sacrifice a lot of truth for belonging, I've noticed. Like there's a trait called disagreeableness that I score very highly in. And what this trait means is basically you're not willing to sacrifice truth for harmony. And most people really fucking are willing to make that sacrifice. And they lie to themselves, and their friends, until they lie to themselves so much they believe it, to have harmony within their social group. And I don't trust the motives, not of everyone, because I see some really good human beings that have concerns around gender or ethnicity or sexuality. Many of them are my friends, many of them people that I professionally associate with the conference, for example. But there's another group of people whose motivations look shifty to me. And then there's this sort of soft group in the middle who just kind of want to belong, and they just kind of don't want too much trouble, if that's okay.
Yeah, then there's the silence brigade as well, and silence. And I'm hearing you, and I agree with that. But the silence thing is the thing worrying me at the moment. Is that's seen as making a statement, and certainly coming from yoga mindfulness sphere. Although I think it's just a human sphere, really. It takes time to process, to reflect.
Right. To think about.
Totally missed. Certainly in the yoga world. The number of yoga teachers telling me what to think and read and jumping on things immediately.
Here's your reading list about racism, Divya. And I'm like, well, hang on a minute. Maybe I want to think about this. Maybe I want to go talk to my friend Divya and get like a point of view from a British Asian woman. And maybe I then want to go talk to my Russian friends and get a totally different point of view.
Yeah, I had, just before we logged on today, I had an email from a friend saying, he's got very different views to me and different heritage and background. Let's leave it at that. And he just wrote a 2-line. He says, can we meet in the park and chat? And I'm like, there you
right.
go.
Might learn something from each other, yeah?
And, but I do agree that silence can also be a turning away. And I have had that growing up with, I used to be able to say black, white, brown, purple, and it didn't matter. Now it's loaded, isn't it? But I used to say I used to have
purple. I've missed that one. They're the purple people.
Yeah, that's another off with her head, but
Is that a Hindu thing? Like Krishna's blue and like something like that, like the purple lights?
I've got a blue god right there, actually.
Got a blue god going on.
A yellow Lakshmi there. And in fact, I wrote a blog post last year about race and yoga, and I think all of about, 10 people read it.
Of course, cool.
Now I saw on the...
I don't trust trends. It's not that I don't think it's a super important. Yeah. There are brown people in my family. My family have suffered racism. Have lived in Africa. I know more about this issue than most white people. Okay, right. And it's like, and I don't trust something that A, is a trend. It's like, hey, let's wait a month and see what you're talking about then. And B, when it's enforced.
Exactly.
I don't want to be told I have to say something, even if I believe it. I don't. If you said to me, Mark, say that ice cream tastes nice, or we're going to publicly shame you, I'd be like, well, I think ice cream tastes nice, but I'm not sure I want to say that. And any silence from someone, there's good reasons sometimes people are silent. Maybe they're scared, for example.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that silence means you're complicit, you're with us or against us. That's the most Nazi right-wing thinking out there. That either you say exactly what we say and you bloody well better say it now, or we'll punish you. That is a form of tyranny.
It is, and it's worrying, and it's worrying me at the moment. I've not had this, but, you know, so I'm 45, I'm not a young blood. I've never had this experience of being in London and noticing people are scared to open them. I mean, this is London. Everyone normally just
very East European. You need to spend more time in communist China or Russia or somewhere like that, and you hear where this leads. It's Maoist, is how I would describe it. Actually, it's Maoist,
and it's not even truly representational because, as we know, the louder voices they're not the majority. It's just they're loud and they're always out there. And so it can then skewer what you do think's going on.